Welcome everybody to the next episode of the Cannabis Review. I am delighted to be joined in this episode by Pete Patterson, who's the CEO of Valcon Medical. We're going to be talking all things Danish cannabis today. Pete, how are you keeping?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm delighted, mate. Great to have you on the show. I've been looking forward to getting somebody on from Denmark to discuss the overview of there. We've been going through the different countries throughout Europe, kind of piecing together the whole industry. So great to chat with you. Can you kind of give everybody an overview of how you got into the industry and how you got to CEO of Alcon Medical real quick?
Sure, not a problem at all. So for myself, I've been in the industry since 2012, actually. Got started by founding one of Canada's first private equity funds. Got that up and going, raised some capital, deployed some capital. It was still very early days when just even talking about cannabis when you were out in restaurants or anything like that was a taboo. So yeah, it was challenging, but a lot of fun at the same instance. Went on to found a company called Vitalis Extraction Technology, and then subsequently sold that a number of years later, and then found myself over here in Europe, making a number of investments here and there, and one of them is Valcon Medical. And so that organization was founded in late 2018. And I've come over from Canada just to add some of that cannabis experience, and just to make sure that everybody on the team is on the right track, which they are.
Amazing. Okay, great. So go, man, a wealth of experience. Can you kind of give everybody the cannabis in Denmark at the moment? From what I can see of the reading I've done so far, you had the 4-year plan extended there just recently in May. So doctors can prescribe it. There's patients can have access to it. Companies can license and export it. And I've recently found that there was a Danish grown product for sale in Germany pharmacies. Is this correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And how,
absolutely true.
And not available for Danish consumers as of yet. Is there a rule and regulation that hinders this, or what would be the case to stop that?
Yeah, so when we start to take a look at the products that are available in Denmark right now, there's 4. There's 3 flowers that have been introduced by Bedrocan, and then a capsule that's introduced by Aurora. As it stands right now, there are no other products that have been introduced into Denmark by Danish companies. It's not for lack of trying, and it's not for lack of the regulatory bodies wanting to allow it or accept it. It just takes time. That's really all it is. So you look at your major cultivators, such as like say Aurora, for example, or Canopy's facility, which is now owned by Little Green Pharma, Scroll Medical. All of these organizations have a flower within the say product approval pipeline, and just going through the checks and balances to make sure that it's going to be available and acceptable to the Danish government, and then therefore to the Danish patients. I'd say just because they have market authorization in Germany doesn't mean that they're automatically going to get it here in Denmark. The regulations or the bars are probably one of the most or the most stringent that we're going to see in Europe from a quality perspective.
Okay, so again, it's the kind of barrier to entry for the products there is just so high, and the regulations are so strict. And here was us thinking EU GMP was the strictest of them all.
Yeah, it's not just EU GMP. Like there's EU GMP, which is going to set your guidelines, but then, however, and these companies are all cultivating at incredible quality. It's really going through the time that it takes for the stability testing, and then alongside of that, making sure that they're doing all of the microbial potency testing through that time and period, just to make sure that those products meet the standards that the Danish medical system is going to be requiring. On top of that, when you're taking a look at flour, just in its raw form, it's a complex product, and the microbials that can be, I guess, housed in this product are probably of the greatest concern to the Danish Medicines Agency. So they really are. They're not taking a look at accelerated stability or anything along those lines. They're taking a look at what's happening on a month-to-month basis in these true long stability studies, just to make sure that this product is going to be safe for the end patient.
Yeah, and I was reading up about Professor Anna Katharina over there working in the Danish Medical or Technological Institute, doing some work on tissue cultures and whatnot. So it seems to be that Denmark is lining itself up to have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed to have this made in Denmark. We've talked to the Maltese guys already, but you seem to be going for a made in Denmark is going to be the seal of approval, you reckon, from the products coming out of there as well?
We're going to see a lot of organizations, yeah, bringing in product into Europe from all over the world. I think one thing that the rest of the world can expect from Denmark, as they have with any other product that comes out of Denmark, it's going to be incredibly high quality, and the consistency is going to be there, right? Which is absolutely necessary for the pharmaceutical and medicinal worlds. We have to make sure that we're creating the same thing over and over and over and over again. And that's something that's being very, very closely watched here.
Yeah, exact dosage when it comes to the medical industry has to be down to the minute 0.0 milligram.
You got
Can
it.
we move on to the next part, which is the Valcon Medical story? You gave us a quick overview. Can you explain to us why the Danish industry, what the opportunity is there, and do you see Denmark having a step above the likes of, personally, I see Ireland and Malta being processing facilities for large scale product being turned into pharmaceutical products and then being shipped into the European pharmacies. Do you see Denmark having an upper step on the two territories I just mentioned there?
So here's where I see the exciting components of Denmark, and maybe taking a step back. Like we evaluated from an investment perspective, where should we set up a facility? At the time, Denmark was one of the first countries that were allowing for the processing and cultivation of medical cannabis. There were a number of organizations that were getting set up to do cultivation here. And we also looked at the regulatory framework where there were no caps on how much you could cultivate. There were no caps on how much you could export. And it was it was very nice and straightforward regulatory framework, which we appreciated. Coming out of the Canadian market, I don't know how many years we spent, working with organizations and watching organizations saying, "Oh, we'll be licensed next month. We'll be licensed next month." And then 2 years later, they're still waiting on their licensing because of the lack of transparency in that licensing process, unfortunately, and the changing of the benchmarks, you might say, right? Versus Denmark, it's been very, very clear. So in terms of getting a license, it's not easy to get a license here, but it's very clear on what's required to be able to get a license. So we saw that as a major benefit. Secondarily, in terms of why Denmark, I'd say probably about like 30 or 40% of their GDP comes out of the pharmaceutical space. So there's a lot of professionals here that are used to working in the not in the cannabis space, but in the pharmaceutical space, with transferable skills to the cannabis space. And when I've seen some of the other markets where they don't have that access to that type of professional labor pool, that can make a big impact in terms of the reliability of the organization and the organization's ability to be able to produce a final product. Taking a look at Malta, taking a look at Ireland, both great spots, even from a tax perspective, both great spots to be able to start up production. We've got, you can see Northern Leaf, they're getting going over there in Jersey, for example, right? You've got, our friends at Materia that's got a facility set up in Malta. All of those are places that we took a look at, even Portugal. It was a regulatory framework that really made a huge difference for us to say, look, is this a very straightforward regulatory framework, and is this something that we can act on? And we founded this organization in late 2018. And it's taken us this long to be able to get through, the fundraising processes, the build out, then the licensing and validation. Right? It takes a very, very long time. And Denmark at the time was great for it, and still has been an exceptional place to be able to do business.
Yeah, a good business partner is a hugely important thing when you're setting up in a different territory, for sure. Last topic of conversation, and I think you're going to have a wealth of knowledge on this topic. Canadian LPs. Are we going to see one of them going bust this year? Is it as big a shit show as I can see from over here in Ireland, or is it something that they're going to pull out of the bag that for some reason to makes this billions of dollars of investment worthwhile? And I thought Hexa were on turning their corner, and they seem to be going the other way completely. So I can see 3 to 4 of those guys running low on capital, and who on earth is going to keep funding unless it's a current investor? So what do you see as the next 12 to 24 months? Do you see some merger and acquisitions there where there's left with like 2 players and kind of they're able to survive on a much more leaner strategy? Or what do you see the next 12 or 24 months happening over there?
Of course, it's anybody's guess, right, in terms of what's going to happen. The Canadian LPs have done a phenomenal job at driving capital into the industry. Canada having the stock exchanges available between the Canadian Stock Exchange, which has been, I guess, jokingly noted as the Cannabis Stock Exchange, or the CSE, and then on top of that with the TSX, right? So lots of organizations going public, lots of access to capital, and then the traditional hype that brought in a ton of capital into the market. To bring capital into that market for a company to say, hey, look, we're going to play it safe and we're going to build out 20,000 square feet and kind of grow with the market, that doesn't drive as much excitement as, hey, we're going to build a facility that you can see from space, which we heard one of the founders at one point say at a conference. So, there was definitely a different components, different strategies to what the end objective was. I think I shouldn't even say think, what we're seeing right now is a lot more of a pragmatic approach within the Canadian cannabis industry, and also that echoing throughout the global industry. Whereas organizations are not saying, hey, we're going to be everything and anything to anybody and everybody. Let's see what we can do to try to grow this company profitably. We are seeing, liquidity challenges within a number of these spaces, but not without, some of these organizations with still strong assets on their balance sheet. And because they have that strong assets, it's really trying to commercialize those assets and figure out, okay, what can we do with these to turn a profit? You see Canopy trimming down quite dramatically, Aurora doing the same thing, and really just right-sizing their business because the industry it's growing fast. Like, don't get me wrong, it's growing quite fast, but it's not growing as fast as they were maybe once previously expecting it. It'll still be a dominant industry. It's still going to be gigantic, but it takes time. Everything, like it took time in Canada, and it takes even more time over here in Europe. And I think what we're actually going to see is, some more consolidation happening, but also more specialization. Rather than companies saying, hey, look, we're going to own all the products and do all the testing and all the cultivation and all the extraction and all the everything, and you're spreading out your dollars so thin, right? And you're spreading out your expertise so thin. And if you look at most industries globally, outside of cannabis industry, they don't operate like that. Even Apple, who said I want everything end to end, they have groups that manufacture products for them and groups that will specialize across that supply chain. And I think that we're going to start to see more and more of that today in the cannabis space, where we're going to see that specialization. We look at it over here in Europe, and just doesn't make sense for a group to go and spend 3 to 5 million euros on setting up their own extraction facility to put out maybe 4,000, 5,000 bottles, and then some of the regulatory changes might cause them to repivot, have to pick up some more capital assets, and then deploy again. And when it takes 24 to 36 months to build out, and then even before you bring a new product to market, just building out and getting qualified, that's a long time, and a lot can change during that time. So I think specialization is definitely the path to the future.
Okay, and last word before we go. We know medical is going to be dominant in Europe for the next few years, but do you see there being a dispensary style model at some stage in Europe to copy the kind of American model?
You know what? Like the Canadians started with a mail-in medical cannabis program, right? Where you could pick up your orders online and have them delivered to you, which was quite interesting. Versus Europe, we already see a physical presence. So I think that step to a dispensary model, once a recreational program comes into play, I don't think that's so far out of hand. It's already in existence. There's a distribution platform already in place. And so stepping into maybe something a little bit more recreation, once it's approved, I think, I do see that happening.
Yeah, I've started to see now a lot of, with the passing of the European Commission, and you can sell CBD flower now legally in the European Union. So I've seen a huge influx of CBD flower being sold at a good price, same as CBD hash. And I know of a couple of stores opening up in Austria and France where they'll be selling CBD flower and CBD hash. And I think that'll be a quick turnaround just to be able to add THC into their inventory model. But it's an exciting industry and lots to look forward to over the next couple of years. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Pete. We got a time limit of 15 minutes, so we're just coming up to that now. Hopefully we'll get to talk again in the future about the Danish industry and how everything's gone for you guys.
I appreciate your time.
Thanks everybody for watching. We shall talk to you again soon.